What I thought I would show you today is just a simple French manicure with a bit of a twist. I've got this on my hands right now, and this is a design that I kind of enjoy doing just to add a little something extra to the French manicure. And it has basically crisscrossing black and red stripes. And it just kind of, I don't know, looks a little bit neat. Sometimes people notice it, sometimes they don't. But I like it, it's kind of fun. And it's a way to dress up a French manicure if you would like. You really don't need much for a French manicure. I'm sure that you've done one before, so basically you just need to decide whether you want a beige base or a slightly pinkish base. And I go for the slightly pinkish base, which is, in this case, Sinful Colors Social Ladder. And then it helps if you have stripers. These also happen to be from Sinful Colors, and it's just a basic red and black with a little bit of shimmer in them. And they have a high gloss finish, which I think looks nice with the accents on the nail. If you don't have stripers, then if you have something like a striping tool or an old makeup brush that's very pointed and thin, that will allow you to create the stripes as well. So, to set out to do a French manicure, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. And I'll show you the way that I learned first and the way that I currently use it. So the first method is just to use the brush in the bottle, and I'll demonstrate this. I already have a coat of the pink and then a coat of the beige. So I'll demonstrate this on here. And basically what you do is when you're working on your own nail, you hold the brush still and you turn your nail underneath the brush. So on this practice nail, I'll just go ahead and swipe it over. But you would just drag it across the top of the nail to create your French. And then of course I'd have to finish up the other side. It's important not to get too much on your brush. You don't want a big blob that comes down and destroys it. And then hopefully you can see me doing this. You just drag it across and you let the brush width determine how large your French is. The thing with this method that can be kind of difficult when doing it on your natural nail is getting all the way to the corner. You might have to take several swipes, and by that time you have a pretty thick French tip on your nail. And how deep you go really depends on your own personal taste. I know a lot of people who like to keep it narrow like this. I like to do rather a deep French. I mean, obviously you can tell by looking at my fingers that they are not that long past my nail beds, but I just like to do a really deep tip on it. Because I like to do a deep French tip, this second method works really well for me, I think, which is just, if you're good with painting brush strokes, you can paint it on the edge of on the end of your nail like this. You paint your first, and then you just use that as a guide to paint the rest. The beauty part of doing the stripes at the bottom is that you don't have to be too precise here. But if you're gonna go ahead and leave this alone and just do a white French tip, then you would just go ahead and do your first layer, and then immediately before it dries, go over it again and clean up the line. And what I do here is I set my brush down and then I push it down slightly to make an even line, and then I pull up. So set it down, push it down until the line is even, pull it up. Now personally, I like the way that looks a little bit better. I think it makes a cleaner French nail tip, and as long as your white nail polish has not thickened too much, this is pretty easy to do. So you want to make sure that you have a good consistency. You don't want it too thin, but you don't want it so thick that when you touch it down it tends to blob and make a little dollop on the top. You don't want that at all. You want it to go down on the nail and then spread out and smooth out. So I've got my base coat on there. I've got my French tip on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and let this dry thoroughly for about, oh, say 10 or 15 minutes before I move on to the rest of the design. Obviously, if you're doing this on your own nails, you would go ahead and create the white French on all of your fingers, let it dry, and then move on to the striping part of it. By the way, if you don't have something like this, which is just a practice nail art wheel, you can buy something like this at your local Sally Beauty Supply, and you get a pack with several practice wheels in there for about $5. It's a really good investment because it is sometimes much easier to practice on these than to practice on your own nails, because with something like this, it's easier to clean it off if you decide to reuse that particular nail, or you can leave it alone and use it later as a reference nail. Okay, we're ready to do our stripers now. The important part with the striper is, like when you're doing the French, is not to get too much nail polish on the striper. You don't want to just pull it out and then start doing your design. You want to carefully swipe off one end of it from the barrel down to the end, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little blob that's threatening to come down and destroy my design, so I'm just going to make sure that's off of there as well. And then I always leave one side unswiped, and that's what has the nail polish that I want to use. So this is pretty easy. All you do is you take your striper, start on one end, and then swipe upward just so that you see the tip. Here, let me see if I can come closer to the camera. Just so that you see the tip of it on the white French. So, giving that one more wipe off. If you need to go over it, just go over it as soon as possible after you've done it, so that you don't actually have two coats of it, but that you're just making the one coat darker. There's our black. The beauty part of this design is you can immediately go ahead and put on the red. If they overlap and the colors commingle, that's completely fine. Believe it or not, this is actually easier to do on your own nail than it is to do on a practice nail, because you would do the same thing as you would for the French method number 1. You would turn your nail and hold the striper still. And that actually makes it a lot easier to create these little stripes. And there you go. It's really that easy. I try to cover the white as well as I can. If I miss a little bit, I can always go over it again with the striper and create a little bit thicker line, because you don't have to have the lines of a perfect thickness or consistency or anything like that. I mean, the whole thing about the look is that it's a little bit messy and edgy. If I want to make this line a little bit darker, I can do that too. And there you are. If you decide that you want to extend the line, you can do that. You would paint over the entire line again and just extend the end of the line to get more of that, you know, point in there. Like so. And And it's that simple. You are done, basically. You just want to go ahead and let this dry and then use a nice top coat. The one that I like is Seche Vite. This can tend to be sort of expensive, about $9, but the bottle that you get is quite a lot larger than most standard size bottles, so you actually do get about twice as much. And it's a bonding top coat, which means that it will actually bond together your nail polish layer with the top coat. And that can be pretty handy because it creates a nice hard impenetrable layer. When you do your top coat, you're going to want to be sure to you know, as you brush over your nail, you're going to want to be sure to then brush the end of your nail to get a little bit of a layer at the end of your nail, and that will help to protect it from chipping. This this white that I did is actually about 2 days old, and I've done dishes and cleaned things up, and I'm really bad on my hands. I use them as tools, so I don't have very long nails, but you know, I just like to keep them neat if I possibly can, and this has lasted pretty long with the Seche Vite. So that's one that I like. I've also tried the Sinful Colors top coat, and I like that as well. So I'm not going to top coat this until I've let this thoroughly dry. One thing that I've noticed about the Sinful Colors stripers especially, but this is kind of common to all stripers, is they tend to be a slightly thinner formula, which makes sense because that would let them stripe better, and as such it takes them a little bit longer to dry, which is another advantage because, like I said, if you want to go over a stripe and intensify it, you don't want it to dry first. You want to make it all the same coat. So again, let this dry a good 10 to 15 minutes before you put on your top coat, just to be sure. The last thing that you want is to start putting on your top coat, which can, you know, be rather full of you know, breakdown agents, especially if you get a bonding top coat like Seche Vite. The last thing you want is to stripe it over your design and then have it smear. That's terrible. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this simple French with a twist, and I will talk to you again soon.